MSM. Welcome inside week 2 of our series called It's Personal, where we're discovering what it takes to have a personal relationship with Jesus. Now, we know that the foundation to any great relationship, any great friendship, is trust. So today we're going to be looking at the question, what can I trust Jesus with? What can I actually trust Jesus with? Can I trust him with everything? Can I trust him with my friendships? Can I trust him with my attitude, my moods? Can I trust him with my schoolwork? Can I trust him with my parents? Can I trust him with my own emotions and my body? Or do I just trust him on Sunday? Is he only trustworthy when you're at church? Is he only trustworthy when you need something? How trustworthy is Jesus, and what does it look like to follow him and love him? Okay, here we go. We're going to do this by looking at Luke chapter 18, verse 18 through 30. Again, that's Luke chapter 18, verse 18 through 30. What I love about the book of Luke is it was written by, I'll give you 3 guesses. It was written by Luke, who is a doctor. So he comes at it from a very detailed perspective. So we're going to get the entire story of how to trust Jesus and what he is trustworthy with. Here's the cool thing. It's a story about a guy who's very, very wealthy. And he's also very, very mistake prone, right? He makes some bad judgments. He makes some bad calls, just like you and I. So before we start to judge this guy and look down at him, why don't we consider that we might be a little bit more like this guy than we tend to admit at first glance. And Jesus is a whole lot more patient with us than we deserve. So let's take a look. Luke chapter 18, verse 18 through 30. Here we go. One day, one of the local officials asked him, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus said, "Why are you calling me good? No one is good, only God." Here's why he said this. This guy was trying to flatter him, right? He was trying to come to Jesus with a lot of flowery speech to get the answer that he wanted from Jesus. He was not for Jesus. He was not pro-Jesus. He was not a follower of Jesus. He just wanted to kind of try and trick him. Jesus said, "Why are you calling me good? No one is good except God. You know the commandments." It says this: no murder, no adultery, no stealing, no lying, honor your father and mother. In other words, Jesus is just giving him the basic entry stuff that he knows this guy already has an understanding of. He's not asking a question that he doesn't know. He's asking a question to try and trick Jesus. Verse 21, the rich young ruler says, "I've kept all of those commandments as long as I can remember," right? So he's kind of beating his own chest. He's kind of puffing himself up and saying like, "I've done all of that. I'm the best." Not necessarily a good thing to do. Even if he has been really good with keeping the commandments, pridefulness necessarily isn't the best way to go about life. Verse 22 says, when Jesus heard that, he said, "There's only one thing left for you to do. Sell everything you own and give it away to the poor. You will have riches in heaven. Then come follow me." Here's what Jesus' invitation was here. Come trust me. If you've done all of that stuff, just come trust me. Verse 23. This was the last thing the official expected to hear, for he was very rich and became terribly sad. He was holding on tight to a lot of things, not about to let go of them. He was expecting another box to check. He thought he was walking into a teacher and saying, "Hey, what do I have to do to get an A in your class?" And they say, "Aha, here's an extra assignment for you." He thought that was going to be the type of relationship. But it was actually a much greater invitation that Jesus was extending than, "Here's some work, fill it out and get back to me after you're done." Jesus was saying, "Come follow me, love me, live with me forever." And he was sad because he didn't want to do that. He just wanted Jesus' stuff. He just wanted Jesus' stuff. He didn't want a relationship. He just wanted what Jesus had. Seeing this reaction, Jesus said, "Do you have any idea how difficult it is for people who have it all to enter God's kingdom? I'd say it's easier to thread a camel through the needle's eye than to get rich people into God's kingdom." Now, Jesus is telling a joke. He's being funny. If you don't think Jesus is funny, boom, he just told a joke. It was kind of a dad joke, which I'm partial to, but he just told a joke. And I would assume that everybody around kind of chuckled and laughed, and then they said, "Then who has any chance at all?" the others asked. In other words, if that guy doesn't, who has apparently kept all the rules and is very, very wealthy, and you say it's really hard for him, then who am I? See, people in that day thought that if you were more wealthy, if you were more rich, and if you did a better job checking the boxes, then you'd have a better chance at getting into heaven. That's not the way that Jesus sets up his kingdom. That's not the way God's kingdom works, thankfully, for you, I, and everyone else. So Peter tried to regain some initiative. He said, "We left everything we owned and followed you, didn't we?" In other words, Peter's kind of going, hey, like, we did that, right? Like, Jesus, we good? We cool? I hope so. Peter tried to, like, figure it out. Peter was never accused of being an intellectual, but he was always doing his best to be obedient in the moment. Verse 29 and 30. "Yes," Jesus said, "and you won't regret it." I would imagine Peter was like, we good? And then he's like, "Oh, okay, good. All right. Awesome." Jesus said, "You won't regret it. No one who has sacrificed home, spouse, brother, sister, parents, children, whatever, will lose out. It will all come back multiple times over in your lifetime, and then the bonus of eternal life." In other words, this guy was just concerned about the afterlife. He was just concerned about, what do I have to do to get to heaven? He wasn't thinking through the perspective of, what do I do right now? What do I do right now? How do I follow Jesus today? And today, that's what we want to figure out. How do we follow Jesus with our whole heart? How do we trust him with everything we've got? Because that could be really hard. But it's something we learn very early on in life, that we can't trust everyone, right? Like when I leave my cats, when I go on vacation, I leave them with somebody that I trust because I love them. And when I come home, I'm not rushing to come home and check and make sure they're still okay. Why? Because I left them with somebody that I trust. I know they're going to take care of them. I know they're probably going to feed them and give them treats and clean out their litter box. I know that they love the cats just as much as I do. So I know they're safe. But if I left them with a wolf, not only would I be silly, but I would probably come home to no cats and then the very, very full wolf, right? That's just a little silly example to say, hey, we know trust is huge, and we know that we can't trust everyone with everything, so we've got to figure out, okay, who can I trust? And if Jesus is someone that I'm going to trust with my life, what does that look like for my today, and what does that look like for my tomorrow? How many of y'all have ever had somebody in your life that you thought was going to be trustworthy, but then actually wasn't? Maybe they told you that you and them were going to be like best friends, and then they ghosted you. Maybe you thought that there was a great friendship developing, and then all of a sudden, one little thing went wrong, and boom, no more friendship. And you're like, what happened? What happened? Or maybe somebody said, hey, I'm going to be there at this time for you. They said that they were coming to one of your games. They said that they were going to be at your party, or that you could go to their party. And then boom, all of a sudden it wasn't anymore. I had an experience like this with a kind of friend, you know, somebody that you knew and were acquainted with, but weren't like super good friends with. When my brother and I were growing up, we used to love to go play basketball over in like a playground park area that was about 200 yards away from our house. We were maybe 13, 14 years old, and there was this one person that was really, really good at basketball, and they would always say, hey, I'm going to be there tomorrow, but they would never be there tomorrow. So it got really, really frustrating. And I started to understand, oh, I can't always trust you. I can't always trust what people say. And maybe you think that's the way your relationship with God works. Maybe I can trust him with some things, but I can't trust him all the time. We'll just wait and see what happens. That's kind of what this rich young ruler thought of Jesus. I can trust him with some things, but I can't trust him with my money. I can't trust him with my money. I can't trust him with my stuff. Because we all have those things in our life that we hold on to, what does the verse say, very tightly. We hold on to them tightly. We don't know if we can trust Jesus with them. And we're just not sure what to do about him. And this guy, he was somebody that was kind of prideful, right? He was saying, I've done all of the commandments. I've got them on lock. You don't need to even look into my past, Jesus. My past is squeaky clean. There's nothing been wrong with my past. And that's not true. And Jesus saw right through it. Okay, so there's the issue. You think you've never messed up. And you think this guy thought that by keeping the rules really good and by checking all the boxes, he was going to develop a relationship with Jesus. But that's not true. That's not how relationships work. Relationships are built on trust, not simply by checking a box. And that's what this guy came here for. He wanted to check a box. He wanted a homework assignment from Jesus. And Jesus wanted a relationship with him. And that's why the guy got sad. Not because he was wealthy. Wealthy people followed Jesus. Luke was a doctor. And he was one of the closest friends of Jesus, one of the best followers of Jesus. Luke was probably very wealthy. Levi, Matthew, tax collector, very, very wealthy, loved Jesus. You can love Jesus and be very wealthy. That's not what Jesus is saying. Jesus was after, what do you love? What do you love most? Do you love our relationship the most? Or do you love your stuff the most? Do you love your things the most? And here's what I love about who Jesus is and who we are at MSM. Jesus was not going to let people settle for a homework assignment when it could be a relationship. He wasn't going to let them settle for that. He wasn't going to let them do that. He wasn't going to let them miss all of the great awesomeness of a relationship with him and trade it in for something not as valuable. He wasn't going to let him do that. There was a story I heard one time from about a grandpa who took his granddaughter to see fireworks, right? So you could imagine grandpa in the got granddaughter in the arms, 3-4-year-old grandchild. They go to see fireworks on the 4th of July. It's a good day, probably. They get there, and he said that every time a firework would go off in the air, like a big firework go boom, up in the air, she would like get terrified. She would start to shake and she would turn away. And every time she missed the big explosion of color in the sky, every time she missed it, he said he was so like sad because all she thought was, Grandpa took me to see loud noises. She was missing the beauty of what was going on in the sky because of the boom that happened right before. That's exactly what was happening to this rich young ruler. He was missing the beauty of the relationship with Jesus and the life change that would happen through a relationship with Jesus because there was something a little scary at the front end of it. There's something a little scary up at the top of that relationship. He just wanted to know, hey, how do I get to heaven? And Jesus wanted to know, what do you love? Do you really love me, or do you just love my stuff? Who are you becoming? Do you value me over everything? And sometimes you and I, we think, if we trust Jesus with everything, it's just going to be an eternal snooze fest. We're going to have to sit in church all day long. The message is going to go on forever. Nothing is going to happen. Nothing is going to change. Goodness, I'm probably going to have no friends. Nothing fun is going to happen. There's going to be something that occurs in my life that's like sucking all of the fun right out of it. And we get it all wrong. We get it all wrong. We don't understand that it's actually improving everything. That a relationship with Jesus actually makes everything better eventually. Eventually. Probably would have hurt that guy to give up all of his possessions at first. Imagine that. Just imagine the thing that you love most, just giving that away. Maybe it's an iPad or laptop or a puppy or something like that, and just saying, you know what, I'm going to leave that behind and I'm going to trust that Jesus has better for me. That could be really, really, really scary. But here's the cool thing, right? Here's the difference between Peter and the rich young ruler. The rich young ruler went in asking for another task list. He went in saying, hey, how do I get into heaven? I got to sell my stuff. I love my stuff more than I love Jesus. And Peter, he has the opportunity to be like, hey, Jesus, we did this, right? I'm on the right path, right? Yeah, okay, all right, good. Simply by staying with Jesus, Peter has the ability to gain security, and Peter has the ability to check in and be like, hey, we're on the same page, right? Okay, good, good. Because he hung around and he stuck in there. But the rich young ruler decided to drop his head and walk away. So here's my 2 questions for us today. 1, what's in your way? What do you feel that you don't really trust Jesus with? Maybe it's a friendship that you're like, I don't know if I can let go of that. I know it's unhealthy, but I don't know what I would do without it. Life is better with Jesus. You can trust him with your friendships. That might look like not having too many friends for a season. But I'm telling you, life is better with Jesus. My friendships are amazing in this season of life. And they have been since I've decided to trust Jesus with them. I was a 17-year-old homeschooled kid with absolutely zero friends. And I decided to trust Jesus with my friendships and let him develop them. And now I look back on my life and my friendships. My core friends were always from the church. And they always loved Jesus. And I hear stories about how friendships just blow up. And I'm like, man, I never went through something like that. It's because I allowed Jesus to be at the center of my friendships. Now, sometimes friendships do end badly. But here's the cool thing about it. When we trust Jesus with our friendships, here's his promise, right? He said, no one who has sacrificed home, spouse, brother, sister, parents, children, whatever, will lose it. It'll all come back to them multiple times over. And the bonus is eternal life. We can trust Jesus with our friendships. Life is better. You can trust his plan for your body, even though you might not feel like you can. You can trust his plan for your body over what you might feel is going on with your body. Maybe you feel like you're in the wrong body. Maybe you feel like you're ugly. Maybe you feel like you are never going to measure up to someone else's standard of beauty. Listen, Jesus has a plan for it. His life is better. His plan is better than our plan for our body. And we get to give our body and everything and literally all that we have to him. And he says, you're not going to regret it. You're not going to regret it. And the specifics of what that looks like and the specifics of how to trust friends and how to trust Jesus with your friends, we can get into that in small group. We would love to be able to do that with you because that's a lot to get to right now. But what I'm saying is life is better when you give it to Jesus. You can trust him with your attitude. This is a big one. This is a big one for me. Sometimes I like to be bossy. Sometimes I like to be sassy. And I go, well, that's who I am. That's how God made me. And in those moments, I'm just like the rich young ruler. And so are you. When we say, no, my plan's better. I know what to do. If I'm bossy with this person, if I'm sassy with this person, if I talk back to mom and dad, if I lash out at this person with my anger because that's how I was made and that's what I feel like doing, what we're doing is we're saying, you know what? I dropped my head. Jesus, you're not worth following in this moment. I can't give you my attitude. I can't give you my emotions. I can't give you and trust you with this situation. I'm going to drop my head and I'm going to walk away. And here's the cool thing about it. Jesus isn't sitting there, arms crossed. He's right there for us. The rich young ruler, he could have stayed there all night and talked to Jesus. He could have said, okay, wait a second. You want me to give you all the things that I've worked so hard for, that I feel like you've blessed me with? I can't get my mind around it. Would you help me with this? But instead, he walked away. And so today, no matter what you're struggling with, if it's your friendships and you're like, I don't know if I can trust Jesus with my friendships. I don't know if I can trust Jesus with his plan for my body. I don't know if I can trust Jesus with my attitude. I just want to be the rule breaker. I want to be the funny one. I want to be the one that's cold and unavailable in an intellect. I want to be the one that just slices people with my words. I want to be that person sometimes. That's okay. So did the rich young ruler. So did Peter. So did I. But let's learn from Peter and hang in there with Jesus and go, hey, am I doing okay, Jesus? Here's the last question that I want us to ask. Now that we've identified, okay, what can't I trust Jesus with sometimes? What do I feel like I can't trust Jesus with? Because Jesus just told us the answer to that question. We can trust him with everything, which is pretty cool. But the last question that I want to ask us today is this. Are you willing to ask one of your small group leaders, hey, how we doing? Does it look to you like I trust Jesus with my whole life? Is there an area that you see that I need to trust Jesus with? You could talk to your small group leader about that. You could talk to me about that. You can even ask Jesus about it and say, hey, just like Peter asked you, are we good? I want to ask you, are we good? And I want to know more about how to trust you in everything. But here's the thing that I can promise you, MSM, you're going to make mistakes. Just like me, just like Peter, just like everyone else on earth, you're going to make mistakes. Here's what I don't want us to do. Here's what Jesus doesn't want us to do. Drop our heads and go, oh, and walk away. Instead, hang in there like Peter and say, hey, we're cool, right? What do I have to do? What do you need me to do? How can I become more of what you want me to be? How can we continue to make this a personal relationship as opposed to another box to check, another homework assignment to fill in? This is about relationship. This isn't about checking a box. That's the beautiful thing about who Jesus is that he can be trusted with everything. Even if we don't trust him with it, he can be trusted with everything. And life gets better when we trust Jesus.
Good morning, everyone. Can we stand up together? We worship the God who is. We worship the God who is. We worship the God who evermore will be. We open the prison doors. He parted the raging sea. My God, who holds the victory. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. Come on, we've come to worship him. Offer yourself to him. We sing to the God who heals.